Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for a busy Wednesday evening. And we are holding what's not working. The Olam hears me, right? Yeah.
Yes, I hear you.
We're holding at the top line of Daf Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Ki Hadar Salik, when Rav Safra again went up to Eretz Yisrael, so Ashkechei, Mark Frankel is giving us the view of his ceiling. I don't know why. Now we're going to get a view of him. That's good. Ki Hadar Salak, when Rav Safra went back up to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkechei l'Rav Zrika, found Rav Zrika. Remember, the question is if you cook liver with other meat, does the other meat become aser? Amalei, so he said, Hai nami loy tibayla. This should also not be a question to you. So it also should not be a question. Dana, for I. Dana v'yanai b'rei Rabbi Ami, I and Yanai, the son of Rabbi Ami, Iklun Be Yehuda Brei Reb Shimon ben Pazi. We visited the son of Reb Shimon ben Pazi. V'krivalon kanyo bekupe, and he brought us the trachea, the windpipe, with all of its attached pieces, the lungs, the liver, the heart, v'chalna. So you see that even though the liver was cooked with other meat, the other meat is permitted. Maskevon Rav Ashi v'yisem Rav Shmuel mizerukine v'dilma, maybe over there pikana l'chutza kedera have. Maybe since it's all attached, and they put the mouth of the trachea outside of the pot, so all the blood of the system went outside of the pot. Inami, or it's talking about where the liver was previously treated. And maybe they scalded it initially either in hot water or in vinegar. They seared it with vinegar. Rav Nachman scalded it with hot water. Now, when they sear it with the vinegar, does that vinegar become aser? Because it absorbed the blood of the liver? So the Gemara says, "V'savar papa kamei derava lameimar chala aser," that the vinegar becomes aser because it absorbs when you sear the liver with it. The vinegar absorbs the blood. Amalei, so he said no, because ichala aser, if the vinegar becomes aser, ionami aser, then it will also be aser because it will reabsorb the blood from the vinegar. Because kiechi depalit, just like it secretes, hadabala will absorb it back. Now, I guess I really should be muting everybody over here. Okay. Now, Rav Bar Shva Rav, the son of Shva, this is obviously not the regular Rav. Rav Bar Shva ikla lebei Rav Nachman. He visited the house of Rav Nachman. Isolate kabda shlika. They brought him heavily stewed liver. V'lo yachal. Now we'll see that it was the opinion of Rabbi Shva that heavily stewed liver is different, because even though normally liver doesn't reabsorb the blood because it's too busy emitting the blood, but if it's heavily stewed, it softens the meat and it absorbs the blood. So Rabbi Shva didn't eat it. Amrulay, they told Rav Nachman, Barbe Rav de Legav, there is a certain Talmudic student inside de Legav that Layachal. Umanu Rabbi Shva. Amalu Rav Nachman, Gomalu Shva. Make him eat it. So the Gemara says Rabbi Shva had who to rely on. Kitanoi. It's actually a machloikas tanoim. Rabbi Eliezer Aimer HaKaved Oiseres. The kaved asses other meat in the pot. Ve'ena neseres, but it doesn't become aser itself. Mipnei shepaletes ve'ena balas, because it gives out, and it's so busy giving out that it doesn't absorb. The shin of a rav. We welcome in Marshall. Marshall always a stickler for being on time for somebody else. It's great to have you, Marshall, even if you come the last 5 minutes.
Mamish the last 5 minutes?
Mamish the last 5 minutes. We know that you're not upset when anybody is late. I could tell. I know, looking in your eyes. But Lamaisa is, Marshall brings us to 32 Zumas. That's the heart, the lave. Right? It's the lave. Marshall is in a way the heart of the shir. He definitely eats a hearty Romanian. Says the Gemara, so I was going to tell you the Heilige Shin of a Rav. I was mentioning the Heilige Shin of a Rav, and then Marshall walks in. I wonder what that means. But the Heilige Shin of a Rav says there are certain rabbis that they don't practice what they preach. They're so busy giving out that they don't absorb it. Right? They got to walk the talk. That's how they say that's pshat when it says Kala Am Royim Es HaKailos. By Har Sinai we saw the kailos. So what does that mean, to see the kailos? So the Bali Darshanim say that when somebody says something, you got to see by him what he speaks about. He has to walk the talk. I'll tell you a personal thing. There's some subjects I don't talk about very much in my drushes. And I've been asked over the years by certain Talmidim why I don't talk about it. And the truth is because certain subjects are hard for me personally. And when something is hard for me personally, I don't feel comfortable talking about it. You got to walk the talk. No, Marshall, it's different than walking the dog. No.
Easier to clean up, I understand.
Rabbi Yishmael ben Aisha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika Aimer, that sometimes the liver becomes usher from its own blood. When is that? Misuveles oiseres. If it's heavily spiced, it's asa because the spice softens the meat and makes it absorb. Iseris v'neseris, and it itself becomes asa. Shluka, if it's heavily cooked. It's interesting because in Nedarim, some of the Rishonim say shalik means lightly cooked, but over here for sure, shalik means deeply seethed, deeply cooked. Shluka iseris v'neseris, because when it's cooked a lot, it softens the meat of the liver and it reabsorbs. Rabba bar Rav Huna, ikla lebei Rabba bar Rav Nachman. Rabba bar Rav Huna visited the house of Rabba bar Rav Nachman. Aisu lekamei, they brought before him, it was Erev Shabbos. They brought before him tlas sovei techoy, 3 saw. This is a very big delicacy. 3 saw of bread that was baked with oil and honey. Very, very big delicacy. Amalahu, so Rabbi bar Rav Huna thought that they made it in his honor, and he didn't know how they knew that he would be there. Mi have yedisu de asina? Did you know that I was coming, that you prepared such a delicacy? Amrulay, so they said to him, Mi adifas lon mina? What do you mean? Are you better than the Shabbos HaMalka? We prepared the delicacy for the Shabbos HaMalka. Dichsiv v'karasa l'Shabbos Einik. You call Shabbos a delight. Dr. Black was surprised that Marshall prepared such a nice meal for him. Marshall said, what do you mean? I prepared for myself. But anyway, seriously, every week we get a very chashuv guest. The Shabbos HaMalka. Adahachi, in the meantime, Ashkechahu kavda dahava simpuna debli adam. Oh, this is a special situation. If you remember last night, Saba mentioned you got to roast the liver. See, there's a problem with the liver, and that is if there's an artery going through the liver, that has blood that's coming from elsewhere. So he saw that there was a liver, da'avaba simpona debli adama, that had an artery absorbed with blood from elsewhere. Amalei, amay avdisuachi, why did you cook it this way? Amrulei, so they said to him, Elehechi nav, what are you supposed to do? Amalahu, oh, karu shesi ve'erev, you have to tear it horizontally and vertically. V'chitucha l'sachas, and when you roast it, the cut has to be facing down, so that blood will go out. But v'hani mili kveida, that's only a problem with the blood of the liver. Aval tachla, but the spleen, even though the spleen has a reddish color, you should know what comes out of it, it's not blood, it's fat. Shumna ba'almahu, which is permitted. Kihad de Shmuel, of the late tafshila de tachle, they prepared normally a dish of spleen b'yuma David Milsa on a day that he did a bloodletting. Now, Imar, kav de ilve bisra, if they roasted the liver on a spit and it was on top of a piece of flanken, shari, there the flanken is permitted, because dama misri ksark, the blood that comes out just slips off in the roasting. Kachla ilve bisra, but if an udder is on top of the flanken when it's roasted, aser. My time, or why? Chalav sruche misruch, the milk of the udder sticks to the flanken. Rav Dimi min Arda masne ipcha. Rav Dimi min Arda teaches just the opposite. Kachla ilve bisra shari. an udder on top of meat, it's permitted because the udder is chalav shchuta, which is anyway only an Isser Rabbanan. My time, a chalav shchuta Rabbanan. But kavda ilvei bisra, but the liver on top of the flanken, aser, because dam dorais, blood is biblical. Marshall wants to know, could you give me already the bottom line? I'm getting hungry. Could you give me the bottom line? So, Dorish Merema expounded, Hilchasa, Bain Kavda, Bain Kachla, whether the liver or the udder, to say Bisra, if the flanken is on top and the udder or the liver is underneath it, Shari. Ilve Bisra, whether the udder or the liver is on top of the flanken, the evidin, it's only permitted after the fact. You shouldn't do it in the first instance. 2 lines from the bottom of Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, just starting an evening of a triple crown, of a daf, a chumashir, mishnayis. What a night to spend, a summer night. Mr. Fisher is telling us that he was an 8 at a chasen. If I had a quarter for every time a person uses that excuse, I would be very rich. Now, Mr. Fisher is a good 8 at a chasen. It's a good 8. Good Eidus. It's good to get Eidus by Elul, because before you're an Eid, you're supposed to do tshuva. Do tshuva and Elul. Okay. So, 2 lines from the bottom of Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Rav Ashi ikla lebei Rami bar Abba, Chamua. Rav Ashi visited the house of Rami bar Abba, his shver, his father-in-law. Chazia lebrei, he saw his brother-in-law. Chazia lebrei de Rami bar Abba, that's his brother-in-law. The koshapid, he was putting on a spit. Kveida ilvei bisra, liver on top of meat. Now remember, we said that's only good b'di'evet, not l'chatchila. Amar, so he said, Kama yor haimi rabbanan, how haughty for this rabbi to do this. Amad amar rabbanan di'evet, he could rely on it b'di'evet, l'chatchila mi amar. And then there's something else, Marshall has underneath his spit, he has a schmaltz tray. Because he wants to get that really good gravy on the bottom. So the ika beiduge, if there's a pan underneath the spit that catches the gravy, bisra ilve kveida namiyasa, even if the meat is on top of the liver, what's in there is asr, because it has mixed with the fat, it has the blood. Says the Gemara, Maishna midama de bisra, but you're telling me only if there's liver. But even if there's meat on the shpud and you have a schmaltz pan, there's going to be the meat from the blood that oozes into the fat. Says the Gemara, Maishna midama de bisra, dama de bisra shachen, regular blood that oozes from meat sinks to the bottom. So you just skim off the schmaltz, the fat, and you eat it. Dama de kveida, but the blood of the liver floats on the top and mixes with the schmaltz. Coffee. You have to know this. You have to be, a gastronomical connoisseur like Marshall. Marshall is a schmaltzologist. I don't know if you ever heard of that. Marshall, did anybody ever call you a schmaltzologist before?
A lot of things, but I do have
Yeah.
maybe a schmaltz
Now, okay, we're holding 5 lines from the top of Daf Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. I think it's time already for me to welcome our august Olam over here. So we welcome in Saba, and as I said before, it's good to have Baruch Ian back in his perch. We welcome Leiby Vega, we welcome Ruvain Shanit and Berish Gesemin, holding the fort at the Agudas Yisrael of Fairways Lakewood, Chaim Kramer, Yaakov Warman, Ruvain Pollack, Rav Elia Yafi, Dr. Black, Yitzi Fuchs, Dr. Guy, Avram Rezepkowitz, Mo Kushner, Michael, Nachum Umansky, Yosef, Marshall Castle, Mark Frankel, who gave us a rear look at his kitchen before. It was a rear look at the kitchen. I caught the kitchen, I saw it. Jay Siegel, who was playing hooky, but he's back. Nachman Chapler, Michal Avram Chavin, Naftali Jablin, Moshe Lehman, Stephen Holtzman, Shelley Zeitlin, Shimon Klein, Danny Vogel, Ilya Shutman, Yitzi Muller, Mark Schafel, Daniel Rosenberg, good to have you. Richard Rosenzweig, good to have you. David Helfgott, and that brings us to, with the 2 in the shul, to 35 Zoomers. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Marshall has to do a lot of work, but we're getting there. So now, that's correct. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, Sakin sheshochet ba, a knife that you shechted with. Now that knife, the Beis HaShchita is hot, and the knife absorbed blood, which is forbidden. Also, lachtak baraseach, you can't cut with it hot meat, because then it'll absorb the blood. Soinen, what if you cut with it cold meat? Imre la boyadacha, some say the meat needs to be rinsed. This is talking about where the knife was, you wiped off the knife. Some say the meat has to be rinsed. Imre la loy boyadacha, some say it doesn't need to be rinsed. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel, Kara shemalach babasa, a dish that you salted the meat. Now when you salt the meat, blood comes out. Now we'll see that some people say that maliach hari kumavoshel. So also lecha b'reisech, you can't eat something hot, because that hot will absorb the blood that came out when it was salted. V'shmul tamei, dama shmul maliach hariu kureiseach. Salting is like cooking. V'kavish hari kumavoshel, and salting is like you roast it, and pickling is like it's cooked. So therefore, when you salted the meat, the blood came out, and therefore you can't cook hot things in that kara, because then the hot food will get the blood. Ki asa Ravin, when Ravin came to Bavel, Rab Yochanan maliach einoi k'roiseach, salting is not like roasting. V'kavish einoi k'mavoshel. So Abaye says, pay no attention to what Ravin says in the name of Rab Yochanan, because it's not true. Amar Abaye had the Ravin lessa. Ravin, what he cited is a mistake. He pincha dahave by Rabami. There was an earthenware vessel by Rabami, the malach by Bisra, that they salted meat. Now remember, earthenware can't be purged. V'tabre. Now Rabami was a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan. Michtei Rabami Talmud Rabbi Yochanan. Rabami was a disciple of Rabbi Yochanan. My time at Tabre. Why did they break it? That salting it is like roasting it, and therefore when you salt an earthenware keli, it absorbs, and you can't kasher it, because you can't kasher earthenware, you have to break it. Now, I'm missing Avig de Moshe tonight. Unless he's here and he can't get on again. Yeah, I know that. Really feel bad. We really miss him. Yeah. Hope he gets better hours. Of course. Now, Yosef Rav Kahana, Achved Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Kahana, the brother of Rabbi Yehuda, was sitting Kamei Rav Huna. He was sitting before Rav Huna. The Yosef Amar, and this is an interesting question. Kara shemolach babasar, a plate that you salted meat in. Also lecho baroiseach. You can't eat hot on it because it'll absorb the blood that came out of the meat. Utsnoin shechat kol betzaken, a radish. Now, a radish is sharp. That you cut with a meat that you used with fleisches. Mutter la'achloi bekutach. You could eat that radish with mayonnaise that has whey of milk. Now, my timer, why is that different? Amar Abaya hay hetera bala. Because the radish was bala heter. What was it bala? It was bala meat. Meat is still heter. V'hayi surabala, but the knife absorbed blood, which is awesome. Amalei Rava, so Rava said, I don't see what the difference is. Ki bala heter ma'have. So what that the knife absorbed fleisches, which is heter, but to eat it with milchik should be forbidden. Saif hay heter dasi d'dei suru, because the kedeach has milchiks, so it should be asur. The yisurakach. Alama Rava, I'll tell you why. Because where you cut the tzainin with a knife, you could taste it and see if it has the tam of meat in it. And if you see it doesn't have the tam of meat, you could eat it with mayonnaise. Amar Rava, hay efshel mitame. But hay lo efshel mitame. Because you can't taste the absorption of the keli because it's blood. And blood you can't taste. Amalei Rapapa Rabba v'litame kfeila arma. But have a guy should cook, see if there's a taste of blood in it. Miloi Tanan, Kedera should be Shabbabaser, a pot that you cooked meat in, lo yavash b'chalab. You shouldn't cook milk in it. V'im b'nais tam. And if you did cook, it's only aser if the meat imparted flavor to the milk. Bishal b'truma, if you cooked in a truma, lo yavash b'chulin, the Yisrael shouldn't cook in a chulin because it's going to absorb the truma. V'im bishal b'nais tam, it's only aser if it absorbed the taste of the truma. V'amrinam bishleim, in the case of truma, you could know if it absorbed the taste. You could have a kain taste it. Tam la kain. Alabas b'chalav, when you cook the milk in the pot or the meat, how are you going to know if it absorbed the meat? Who's going to be able to taste it? Man tamla. V'amalana, we said litamek feila arma. Let a guy should cook taste it. Hachanami, where you salted the meat and then cooked on that plate, let a guy should cook taste if there's a taste of blood. Hachanami litima kfeila. Says the Gemara, Hachanami, if there's a guy should cook around, you could do that. Kika amina, we're talking about the leka kfeila, where there's no guy should cook around. Okay, 2 dots. Kuf Yud Aleph from it Beis, as was sponsored by the Fogel family, the Nishmas Yaakov Zev ben Yodaya, Rivka bas Yaakov Yosef, Tziv Yemirim bas God, Yosef ben Tzim ben Yaakov Zev, Lefu Shalema for Moshe Arya ben Miriam, for a great shidduch for Chaya Tzivya bas Shoshana Gittel, great shidduch Babati bas Sarah, by Imach Mimansky, that he and all those that are waiting shidduch should find their shidduch quickly and easily. by Mark Frankel, Ili Nishmas Ilana Chana Bas Yosef Avram, by Ed Sal, Lefu Shalem for Yosef Shmuel ben Miriam, Lefu Shalem for Yitzhak Mordechai ben Esther Bracha, and Lefu Shalem for Avigdor Moshe ben Malcolm Shmei ben Esther Fradel, should all have a Lefu Shalem for B'Seich Sharchel Yisrael. Now we come to the famous sugya of Nat bar Nat. Noisin Tam bar Noisin Tam. In halacha, this is known as Nat bar Nat. Imar Dogim she'alu b'kar. Fish. Marshall made a sea bass. He likes sea bass. Fish that was on a plate that absorbed fleisches. Rav Amar Asa La'achlam Bekutach. You can't eat it with mayonnaise, with milchiks. While V'Shmuel Amar Mutar La'achlam Bekutach. Rav Amar Asa Noisin Tamu. Because the fish that was cooked on the fleishige plate absorbed the meat, and therefore you can't eat it with milchiks. V'Shmuel Amar Mutar Noisin Tam bar Noisin Tamu. Because this is second generation. The plate absorbed meat, that's Noisin Tam. Then the fish absorbed that taste, that's Noisin Tam bar Noisin Tam. Now Rav that says it's aser, v'hod the Rav la b'feirish itmar. It wasn't said outright, ela michlol itmar. It was inferred from a statement of Rav. The Rav ikla lebei Rav Shimi bar Chia bar Brei. Rav visited the house of Rav Shimi bar Chia, his Einikel, his son's son. Chosh be'einav, he had pain in his eyes. Avdulei shaifa b'tzah. They prepared an ointment in a plate. Then they cleaned the plate. Afterwards, they put a piece of flanken on the plate. So tom le tama de shaifa. In the flanken, you tasted the taste of the ointment. Amar yov taima kulahai. Rav was surprised. It gives such a taste. Now that's not by not, because the ointment was in the plate and then it went into the meat. And Rav says, oh, it still has such a taste. So the Gemara assumes that means that he holds always that not by not is a problem. However, v'lohi, it's not necessarily a proof. Shani Hasam, an ointment is different because an ointment has a very strong pungent flavor. Shani Asim the Nafish Marora Tvei. Its bitterness is very strong. Now, let's follow this story. So many nice people over here. 36 Zoomers. And we're missing so many people. I don't know where Avigdor is. I don't know where Reb Kniel is. I don't know, is Gedalia Engel here? I don't see Gedalia Engel. Missing a lot of people. Really letting Marshall down. Marshall, you can't put posters up on I-95? You don't have that connections?
No, I got Eddie in my back pocket, I think.
Yeah, where is Eddie? Eddie is missing too. Wow. Eddie really doesn't. Not usual to miss Eddie. He must be very busy with 6 or 7 bookies at the same time. So okay, Rabbi Elazar Avikom Kamei de Mar Shmuel. Rabbi Elazar was standing before Mar Shmuel. Aisu Kamei Dogim She'olu Bekara. They brought before Mar Shmuel fish that was made in a fleishige plate. So this is our case of nat bar nat. The plate got the taste of the meat, then it went into the fish, and v'ka'achal b'kutach. He ate it with kateach, with the milchik and mayonnaise. Yovle, they gave some to Rabbi Elazar. V'lo yachal. Rabbi Elazar didn't eat it. Amalei, so he said to him, Rabbi Elazar was a Talmud of Rav. So Amalei l'rabach yavlei v'achal. To your Rebbe I gave such a thing v'achal, and your Rebbe ate it. V'at lo yachlis, and you don't eat it. Amalei, so Rabbi Elazar, also the Kami de Rav, Rabbi Elazar came from Rav. Amalei hoder beimar mishmaitze. Did the master retract and say that nat bar nat is mutter? Amalei chaslei lezare de Abba bar Abba. This is the way he referred to Shmuel. He referred to Shmuel, who was a colleague of his, as the son of his saintly father, Abba bar Abba. Abba bar Abba was a very saintly man. And he said, Chas v'shalom, that the son of Abba bar Abba, meaning Shmuel, would have served me something that I think is forbidden. The lisve midi, that he would serve to me, v'lo svirili, something that I don't hold up. I don't know if the Olam remembers, but there is a very, very unusual story with Shmuel. Shmuel's father was went away from his house, and he was propositioned by a woman who offered to pay him to be with him. Now, the father of Shmuel says, that's not the derech. She said that she had a dream that from the union of the father of Shmuel will be born a big gadol. So the father of Shmuel somehow recognized that it's Dvarim Shebegav, that there's some. So he used the Shem HaMefarish and went back and had relations with his wife. And then he again used the Shem to go back to his business. In the meantime, his wife got pregnant, and the father of Shmuel was out of town. So there was a rumor that she committed adultery. And they assumed that her child was a mamzer. And they gave her malchus. Shmuel says he remembers when they beat his mother, and he still has a mark on his head from that beating. When the father of Shmuel came back, he testified what he did with the Shem HaMefarish, and that's why they referred to him as Avur de Shmuel. Why did they refer to him as Avur de Shmuel? To ratify that he was Avur de Shmuel. And it's interesting that his name was Abba, Tati, Abba bar Abba. Shaila is, I never got a pshat in it. How he put his wife into such a predicament of suspicion. That I never had a pshat in. Rav Huna and Rav Chia bar Ashi, Rav Huna and Rav Chia bar Ashi have a yosvei chad b'hai gisa de mabra de surah, the chad b'hai gisa de mabra surah. Each one was sitting on the opposite side of the bridge of surah, like on the two sides of the Danube, Pest and Buddha. To one, they brought him fish that was made in a fleishicha keli, that was in a hot fleishicha keli, or a hot piece of fish that was on a fleishicha keli, and he ate it with milchiks. They brought figs and grapes in the middle of a meal that he made a maitzi, and they didn't make a bracha. Right? Some people on things like a cherry in the middle of the meal will make a bar priya eitz. He didn't make a bracha. Mar amalei l'chavre, one said to the other, Yasma ovid rabbachachi, O orphan, in this halacha, would your Rebbe do this? To eat fish that was made, hot fish that was on a fleischer plate, to eat it with milchiks? Or Mar amalei l'chavre, Yasma ovid rabbachachi, orphan, would your Rebbe do this to not make a bracha of a fruit that was eaten in the middle of a meal? Mar amalei l'chavre, anot kishmul svirali. I ate the fish with ketech because I hold like Shmuel that not by not is permitted. Or Amar amalei l'chavre, I didn't make a bracha because anot Rab Chia svirali. I hold like Rab Chia. The Tani Rab Chia passed by teres kol minei machal. Bread, patas, all types of food. V'yayim poita kol minei mashkin. And wine, patas, all liquids. Okay, this was a pretty big daf. The evening is just getting started, as we now will pause to set up the machinery for the Chumash year.